Hello, friends, and welcome to Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Selden, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle, and I've seen almost nothing.
And we're going to talk about Galavant Season 2, Episodes 3 and 4, where stuff happens.
I was going to see if you were going to give just like a spontaneous summary. It reminded me of Season 1 of this podcast episode. Season 1 of this podcast show. Episode 3, in which, except we're not playing it, we're not recording about a show with a tiny little mystery that we can sum up anymore.
I know. We're also not doing one episodes at a time, which makes it much more difficult.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Because
you summarized the Fringe episodes too, though, because with the Fringe episodes, you could also summarize just like whatever the monster of the week or the mystery was.
That's fair, but I think you just answered your own question with it was a monster of the week. All you had to do was name the monster. Mm-hmm. This week, the monster is racism.
I was going to say, what's the monster in this particular episode? Is it
capitalism?
The monarchy, perhaps?
It might be the monarchy. It's a little bit eat the rich.
It's a little bit
eat the rich. You know, I feel like I'm going to get in hot water if I finish that sentence. So I'm going to skip over that.
Oh, I wanted to hear the end of it. You'll have to tell me off the pod.
I'll tell you off air. No, so definitely in episode 3, it's like Gareth is feeling guilty.
Yes.
King Richard finds out he's no longer a king.
Throws a quick tantrum.
Throws pretty much an episode-long tantrum. Well, it's an episode-long tantrum.
Okay.
He kind of comes around by the end of it.
I was going to say that I think it started out as a more classic tantrum. Like, where is this? Where is that? Yelling, like, walking around, like, I can't believe this happens. But then partway through the episode, it kind of evolves into an identity crisis for him. So then it was...
You're not wrong.
You know, like, the B-side of a tantrum.
Yeah, it's the, you know what it is? It's the stages of grief.
Oh, ooh. What are the stages of grief? This is one of those questions that I feel I should know the answer to, but I have never once in my life, and I, dear friends, was once upon a time a psych major, been able to name, in order, every single stage of grief. Anger, betrayal. No, not betrayal, bargaining. I was thinking of a B word. Anger, bargaining.
Yeah, it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance.
There's 5.
I think there's actually like a 7th one, though.
Did you just name 5 things?
Yeah.
Thought there were 7.
Well, there are. It depends on who you ask, because the internet has decided there are both 5 and 7.
What?
Because the first one could be shock, right?
Okay.
Shock that this happened.
Yes.
And then after all of the things I listed, processing grief, which personally I am of the opinion that is not necessarily a stage of grief, because the whole thing was the process of grief. Oh. So I would actually make the argument that, like, what?
That's part of acceptance.
Right?
Yeah.
It's either part of acceptance or it's part of understanding that this is a process.
Right. The whole thing is
the
process. Yes, that makes sense to me. At any rate, Richard is shocked initially, and then I don't know that he really hits denial, because it's very, very obvious that his castle is gone. I mean,
he hits denial when he gets to the town.
Very
because
true.
He's like, I didn't think this was here before. And then he suddenly realizes that the walls are basically made of the things from his castle. And then he gets angry.
And I kind of love this. I kind of love what happens, which, for anyone who hasn't seen the episode recently, is that King Richard went off to conquer Valencia, successfully conquered it, and then just stayed there for at least an entire year in canon, right? Not even including
minimum of a year,
exactly, like not even including the Act 3 of season 1, right? Mm-hmm. So the king just left, and his has been gone for, let's call it 1.5 years. And while he was away, all of the villagers were like, "Wait a minute, do we even need this guy?" And so they tore apart his palace and castle and used it to build homes for themselves, and then renounced the monarchy. And now they're Democrats, I guess.
They're essentially living in a democracy, but a democracy from like the U.S. circa 1902.
I mean, as they say in the song, it's progressive for the Middle Ages.
Yes. This song is one of my favorites because it's such a very, like it has that moment of like almost being the kind of thing that is very groundbreaking.
Yeah.
But also they because it's a song in a musical in a show that is also self-referential, they're able to be like, and these are where our shortcomings are.
Right. What if everyone gets a vote except for him and him and him and her and him and him and her? You know, and it's literally like women and redheads and people who are unhealthy and people who live in poverty and
people who are non-white.
And exactly, like eventually it boils down to no one gets a vote except white straight men.
Yeah. Which there's something about that song that like I love a self-aware, sort of number like that. It's just it's really catchy. It kind of gets your feet tapping. It's cute.
Very tongue-in-cheek.
It's a cute song.
These couple of episodes were very song-heavy. Was that just me? Or
no?
I don't think so.
No, I don't. I think they were pretty song-heavy. And I don't know if that's because we had a lot of character development in these two episodes. This was that character development I kept dangling in front of your face because I was like, I promise, Richard has a moment.
Yep.
He has several.
His identity crisis moment. Should we just talk about Richard before we talk about Gareth?
Yeah, let's, because this episode kind of happens, it does happen in 3 parts. We can get to Isabella at the end. She has her own tiny piece, which is super plot heavy, but like not a huge amount of character development because reasons. We'll get into that. But like, yeah, Richard has this sort of cloud hanging over him for this whole episode, which we've already talked about, right? He's processing the grief.
Right.
But like, it's not just that. It's that like, he had this whole thing in season 1 about how like nobody chooses him. And here it's like, not only did these people not choose him, but they actively are getting rid of him, which is not something he's, encountered yet.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't think.
Magdalena.
Well, like his subjects haven't rejected him.
Okay.
Right? Like, he hasn't had to deal with, I mean, like, he's a conquering king. So, like, the people of Valencia obviously didn't like him. But it's not like they were in active revolt. Because he overpowered them anyway, so they just had to go along with what he said.
Right.
So, like, the people in his own kingdom, though, are like, no, that's okay.
Yeah, and he gets. I actually quite like his face when he first shows up in the village, and he's like, you're obviously starstruck. And they literally, no one recognizes him. Everyone is starstruck by Galavant instead of him. They're like, oh, that famous knight. So yeah, there's zero love for King Richard, but you're right. It's the opposite of that. They actively rejected him. So he's like, he's mourning that. He's mourning the loss of his castle. And he's also mourning his identity as the king. Because now, if he's not the king, the thing he's been his entire life since he was a little kid, who's he supposed to be?
Yeah. A thing that, you were taught as a little kid that this is your birthright. There was a king before you and a king before that and a king before that. And you will be the next king and you are the next king, And it's like, what do you do with that? And I this is sort of where I was talking about, like, what happens when King Richard no longer has that level of privilege.
Yeah.
Where he's just stripped of everything. And now he's just a guy. What? He doesn't have any skills.
Just a guy. Just a buddy. Just the guy who's going to help Galavant get Isabella back. Except that he's distinctly unhelpful, which we get into more in episode 4 than we do in episode 3. But
I know. This is one of those other, like, there's that cross section of knowledge where it's like you don't know anything and you don't know how to apply it. You know a little bit of something, but you still don't know how to apply it. You know a lot of something, but you have no idea how to apply it. And then, like, all the things and you can do all the things, right? Like, he's somewhere not at the finish line. He's somewhere in there. So he's like, he knows what he wants to do. He just has no idea how to do it.
Right. Yes. I love the moment that absolutely falls flat because it was almost like a tease. Like, okay, so this entire episode, Galavant is, being pretty single-minded. He's continuing in his pursuit of an army, which he can use to overtake the armies of Hortensia and save Isabella. Again, Galavant says, I'm going to go save Isabella so many times, and I need the writers to stop putting that in the script. Please and thank you.
I know. It gets very broken record. But
okay, he's trying to get an army.
Point out.
Oh, sorry. Yes, as the villagers point out.
Well, I'm sure this is probably the point you were about to make, because those are the nature of our conversation. But like, as the villagers point out, this was literally his quest in season 1.
Yes,
was to save Madalena.
Well, I was going to point out less that I was going more towards Richard, but we should talk about that because that is so funny. But yes, Galavant makes
like this is his character development of like,
yes.
Okay, like I know what I said. Like it's very like the sky is falling.
Yes.
You know, like, okay, but I mean it this time. This princess actually wants me.
Yeah.
So like we need to save her. But it's like, right, but didn't.
It's so funny because putting the two of them next to each other, you and I have like 4 half-formed thoughts. Dear listeners, stay with us. Everything's fine. We will tie it all together, we promise. Putting the two of them next to each other is so interesting because we have Galavant who, because he's the quote hero of the show, or the protagonist, I guess we could say, but the hero of the show, right? You almost like expect all of the character development to happen for him, right? And I think he, in the canon of the show, believes that he is developed as a character, right? Like he thinks that he has grown and matured and become a better person. And then he gets up in front of the townspeople or the villagers and everyone's like, no, you're the exact same person you were in season 1, different season you, girl. This isn't growth. You're back at square one, my man.
Exactly. I love it. I love it when shows call out stuff like that. It's my favorite thing.
It's so good. Whereas, you know, the opposite side of that is King Richard. Not King. No longer King. The opposite side of that. Just Richard, who doesn't see himself as a character who's been able to grow because, you know, as he says in his little identity crisis song, which I really enjoy, like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who I am or what I am. I'm still going to be me. Right? So he sees himself as very stagnant and incapable of growth. But realistically, he is actually a character who's showing a lot of growth.
I mean, like, and here's going to be another thing that I kind of assigned to him that the writers, I think, accidentally assigned to him. You know, just like with the failed ace thing. Mm. But it's more like he has that he has sort of this lack of self-awareness.
Yes.
I mean, as well as many other lack of awareness things. But like he also just doesn't have a self-awareness factor at all. And this is almost him like growing into that. But a lot of people, when they don't know how they look to the rest of the world or what they come across as, they usually come down very hard in the way of like, I just don't have a personality. Right. Yeah. Like, and like people just don't know who I am because what am I without my title?
Right.
Which we could ascribe a lot of things to Richard. Not all of them are kind.
Mm-hmm. But he is certainly a person. As I said, what?
He is certainly a person. As you said before we started recording, of like, I will never stop reminding people that he is a genocidal.
Yes. This is
monarch.
Yes, a genocidal monarch. No matter how cute and charming they make this character out to be, he's a war criminal. He is literally a war criminal. We can't forget that. Don't let them trick you.
I'm not saying he doesn't have a long way to go. I'm saying progress is progress.
Progress is progress. He's got bouncy curls now. I love him. Still a war criminal.
I have to well, maybe I'll mention it off the pod. You know what? I'll mention it here. I can always cut it later. I recently have been like talking to some like long lost family members, and I was sharing some pictures that like we were able to find through genealogy and stuff. And I was like, here's a picture of like a satyr with part of my family, and I know nobody in this picture. Do you guys know who anybody is? And we're like looking, and they're trying to put some names with faces. And I was counting the seconds until they noticed that one of the dudes definitely has like the old German square mustache.
Yeah.
And someone was like, anybody else clock the Hitler stash in the corner?
No.
And I was like, I'm not going to lie, I was waiting for someone to say that. I was curious about that also. I just assumed German hairstyle at a certain point, you know, the way to work your facial hair there, which became an unfortunate look after a certain year.
Yeah.
But like, that's how I feel about, like, he's got these soft, bouncy locks, but, you know, he's still a genocidal murderer. Don't let the hair fool you.
Don't let the hair fool you. Okay, wait. What I forgot to say, what I was attempting to describe earlier was that bait and switch moment in the show where, again, like, if the show were to fall into the normal beats of character development or the normal beats of an episode, you would think like, okay, beginning of the episode, Richard is having an identity crisis. Middle of the episode, he gets an identity crisis song. End of the episode, he's literally, he's drunk, but he can't even be the town drunk because there's already a town drunk. Galavant gets up, gives this, well, he attempts to give a rousing speech at the town hall, fails miserably. His charm fails. And how often does his charm fail? And then...
Yeah, he definitely rolled a 1 on that one.
And then Richard stands up. And in the normal beats of a show, you would think to yourself, aha, here it is. This is the thing. This is the thing he's going to be good at. He's going to be good at hyping up his best bud. He's going to be a good
wingman
at bringing people together. And then it turns out he's actually garbage at that as well. He's able to rope in precisely one person, a woman named Roberta.
Who stands up, and I think she says, "My king?"
Yes, something along those lines. But it is, you know, she's just, I don't know, smitten, I suppose, with his speech about true love.
Yeah, we don't just leave Roberta in the town. Roberta comes with us, and we will see why.
I'm excited to talk about episode 4 because of Roberta, but first we have to finish talking about episode 3. I mean, that's the Galavant and Richard side of it. Did you want to talk about Galavant more?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, pretty much just what we said, that, like, Galavant is exactly what you said. You know, like, he thinks he's a fully realized creation, but he's still going through stuff.
He's still going through precisely what he was going through a whole season ago. Like, remember season 1, episode 3? Same Galavant. We're in season 2, episode 3.
So Gareth is going through something also.
Yes.
Which is, I love these 2 episodes because we get some genuine feelings from Gareth and from Magdalena.
Yes.
And, like, this episode is Gareth's guilt episode, where he's feeling guilt about stealing King Richard's throne and essentially stabbing him in the back and betraying him. And at first, and Sid, of course, is the one to, like, help him through this because that's the assistant job, right? And like, also because Madeleine said she would off with his head if he didn't help her get her beauty sleep. Because he keeps waking up in the middle of the night screaming because all of a sudden, like, Richard's head is in his bed and, like, crying about it, you know.
But the best thing... The best thing is that Gareth is such a literal character and is zero in touch with his feelings, very similar to Magdalena. So he's having these awful nightmares and can't get a bead on what they mean. Meanwhile, in his nightmare, he literally stabs Richard in the back. And he's like, what could this nightmare mean? Like, he literally takes Richard's crown off his head. And he's like, I don't really know.
I know. And then his crown was on my head. I don't get what's going on here. And, like, in a very uncharacteristic sort of, like, lack of self-awareness, because I feel like Gareth knows himself very well.
I feel like he knows himself to a point, right? He knows.
Oh, fair.
He knows that he likes beer, which is most of what he shares before. He knows that he's violent and that he likes fighting, right?
Yep.
But I think it's like now he's feeling a thing he's never felt before. And he doesn't know how to identify it. The feeling is guilt. He's feeling guilt.
He's feeling guilt. And Sid sort of helps him with that.
Yes.
My favorite thing is the this is what my mother did for me before
Me
I
too.
before I went to sleep.
Sid's little like good night song.
It's so sweet. And like, and it gets to the end and like you think, and again, like this is where it kind of turns itself on its head, right? Because you think Gareth is going to like punch him out of the room or something, right? And like Gareth has just got this like mean look on his face the whole time waiting for the song to kind of end. Yeah. And Sid is sort of oblivious, like he's fully in it. Like, this is exactly what you do. And he stops and he's like taking these bad dreams out of his head and he stops and like, because the song is done.
Yeah.
And Gareth is like, there's one more.
It's so cute.
One of my favorite Sid moments just in the entire show is like that little scene right there. Sid in a nutshell.
Yep. And
so cute.
His smile absolutely sells it.
I know.
It's so good.
He's got an amazing smile.
I don't know. I liked this episode. I liked that there were a lot of surprises in this episode. Interestingly. I wasn't like not expecting Richard's story to go this way, but it was still sort of a nice surprise to see it on the screen.
Like, okay, so with as much time as we've spent with, like, Richard's love life and getting into episode 4.
Yeah.
Is it, I mean, we still have one more thing to talk about in 3, but, like.
Yeah, but that really leads into 4, so it's all good.
Yeah. Like, is it annoying or is it like, oh, is this why we were spending this much time on it?
Is what annoying? That he's, like, entirely uninterested in Bobby?
Or that Bobby is very interested in him and may or may not become a love interest.
I mean, I think I will have to wait and see how they handle it to decide whether or not it is annoying. Like
that's fair.
Currently, it's not annoying the Richard side of it. So now we're in episode 4, dear listeners, titled "Bewitched, Bothered, and Belittled," very appropriately. And I don't think it's annoying that Richard doesn't see her as a love interest, because that makes sense, like in the canon of the show. Like he sees her as a friend and not as someone he can be romantic with. And so he just doesn't really have those feelings for her, right? Like that's what he said earlier, that he doesn't feel that way unless he's in love with someone or they're in love with each other. She's in love with him. I don't know what she sees in him, to be honest. Especially since, I mean, maybe she's got some leftover memories of what he was like as a kid. Like maybe he was a better kid than he is a grown-up. The show hasn't really given us much insight into what he was like as a child. Like, did he pull the wings off of flies? Was he like that back then? I don't know. All we know is that he likes to eat bread and had a mean older brother.
True, and had a very nice nanny.
Right, but she saw something in him, I guess. Sees something in him now, I guess. But I guess I'm just primed to accept it because for some reason Isabella likes Galavant. So I guess Roberta can like Richard.
I was so hoping that you would get to that point because I was like isn't this familiar?
I don't see the appeal in either character.
Like, isn't this familiar? A woman who knows how to fight, who knows how to who knows exactly how to protect Richard.
Yeah.
Who is able to, carry on a conversation meaningfully, genuinely cares what he has to say, even though she may not, exactly agree with some of the things he's saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I'm being honest, like at this exact point in time, I hope they don't end up together. And the show is going to have to convince me, like really hard convince me that they belong together in order for me to buy into it. But based on the way this show has been written thus far, and based on the way the romance in this show has developed, I'm pretty sure they're going to end up together. But maybe
I wish the listeners could see your face for that. It was like equal parts like comedic while also still being somewhat hopeless of just like, oh no, please don't.
I'm like a little hopeful that maybe they'll be able to sell me on it. They've got some time. They could sell me on this romance somehow.
I mean, it's interesting to me because I think you come at it from a position that I sort of just, like I accept the tropes that they have presented where like women tend to be the more intuitive ones and men tend to be the ones who aren't paying attention and blah, 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 blah. And like if those laws are in effect, one can pretty much guess that eventually Roberta will wear him down because that's what also women do.
I guess.
I don't have to be happy about it per se, but I feel like I've hit acceptance way faster than you did.
I've hit acceptance.
Like, but what if you turned it on its ear?
I just want them to make it better than it could be. Like, what if it's what if it's more than he falls for her because she loves him? Like, that's kind of what I don't want it to be, but I think that's what it's going to be. A person who's finally genuinely interested in me. Like, if what he likes about her is that she likes him, that will annoy me.
Fair. I'm not going to spoil it for you.
You don't have to.
I'm not going to say anything. We're going to find out together. We're just going to find out together, and it's going to be beautiful.
Okay, but that's where I'm saying. This is it. You got to write it down.
That's it.
If what first attracts him to her is that she likes him, Danielle hates it.
Understood. We'll put a pin in that and we'll revisit it because there aren't that many episodes left. I mean, I know it's crazy, but it's not a long season. We'll know very soon.
You've told me this 4 times and it's been recorded, but is it 8 or 10?
It's 10.
10. You've told me this 4 times. The listeners are like, Joy has told you this 4 times. We heard you tell her.
We have 3 more episodes of us recording this, 2 episodes each. That's it. And then it's the wrap up and that's it. Getting into the Isabella part of it, because that's going to be some of the overarching plot arc. Those words weren't great, but there they were. They were words I said. So Isabella is reliving her breakup with Galavant.
I love that they have she has the jester, like, playing the scene for her over and over again with puppets. Play it again. Are you
Play it again. I don't think this is healthy.
Play it again.
This is a healthy way to play it again.
I mean, classic Danielle. I instantly asked myself, like, what is she eating? Because they look like marshmallows, but they're hard, but they're square. I don't think they're chocolate, unless they're pink, white chocolate, but they don't look like pink, white chocolate.
What they might be, what's it called? It's not like a meringue. It might be like a meringue. That
would actually make a lot of sense texturally.
Like a dry, crunchy.
Yes. Like
thing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I would have to revisit the scene.
No, you're right. I think it's like a square sort of meringue type thing. Anyway,
it's
she's
one of
eating
those
something.
things that, it's made of like powdery sugar. It's almost got like a chalk consistency, but it's tastier than what I'm making it sound like. Like
it melts in your mouth and kind of gets stuck in your teeth when you chew on it.
It looked tasty. Exactly.
Tasty.
Like almost like a nougat something. But anyway.
But crispy.
So she's eating sugar. She's like the epitome of depression after a breakup. I loved it so much. Like, had ice cream been invented, she would have been eating ice cream.
Yes.
Like one of those
chocolates, moments. Right?
Or chocolates. And her parents come in and they're kind of like, okay, well, time to plan the wedding. And she's like, I genuinely do not care. I have agreed to this wedding, but I don't care. I don't, whatever you do is fine. And they're like, no, you have to be like involved in the process. And we've even invited this wonderful wedding planner who, spoilers, has an ulterior motive.
Yes, which I don't even think it's a big spoiler because it's immediately obvious that he's sort of an evil character. His name is Mr. Wormwood, and when he promises her the wedding of her dreams, he's like crossing his fingers behind her back, which even most generously means that he's going to throw her the wedding of her parents' dreams, which he essentially does.
I like that that's the first thing you made a point of. Well, but what's hilarious to me there, because the parents should be behind him, right?
Yes.
So shouldn't they see him cross his fingers behind his back?
They're too excited about the prospect of this wedding. They just are very wedding focused. They would really like this to happen. Her being married to her cousin, Harry.
Yeah, specifically. And we get a little later in the episode, he's talking to his assistant in a very funny conversation of like a very who's on first level of joke.
Okay.
Of like,
the wedding.
did you write it down?
I
Because
did.
it's good.
Like, for clarity, they get confused because he's talking about the scheme. I mean, it's a little bit who's on first, and then it's a little bit the poison, the Cusco's poison, the poison that's going to, you know.
That's also what I thought of.
His assistant is like, the scheme. And he's like, oh, his assistant goes, the color scheme? And finally, the two of them go, oh, no, okay. For clarity, it is the wedding plan, the evil plot, the color scheme.
Yeah.
The poison.
So good.
Cusco's poison.
It's so good. It like that whole scene is just magic. So like he's got this headdress for her. Oh, like a tiara? Like a hair. It's like a hair
tiara.
pin.
Tiara.
Yeah. It's a tiara with a very special stone in the center. And he's talking about like through the song, which by the way, this wedding song is like, as somebody who got married a couple of months ago, the wedding they had planned for Isabella is my nightmare.
Yeah, it's a very stressful wedding song.
It's like my teeth went on edge immediately. And it was something like 27 bridesmaids. And I was just like, ugh, like my body locked up.
But see, that's like the song is so well written because it is the words, the music, everything about it is extremely stressful. It has an evil, like an evil monologue verse for the wedding planner, which is pretty spectacular, and which Isabella's parents like almost hear.
They come so close to clocking it, but it like, you know, in the very Galavant way of like, you know, you whisper something under your
like,
breath
"What
and
did you
then
say?"
someone almost catches it and is like, oh no, I changed it.
I changed it, and then the song continues. But, you know, at the beginning of the song, Isabella is, as we would expect her to be, just actively rejecting the idea of this wedding, doesn't want to be involved, doesn't want it to be to happen. But then, during the wedding planner's evil verse, he puts the tiara on her head, activates it, and she ends the song 100% here for it. Here for the wedding, super excited, can't wait to get married to Cousin Harry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's like not just here for it, like energetically advocating for the wedding.
Which is like kind of fun to see because, like, fun and not fun. Fun because we never get to see Isabella sing joyfully.
I know.
Like
fun because the actress is doing a really good job at it.
Not fun because we, the audience, know that she has a tiara on her head that's controlling her brain. And in real life, Isabella would never be this excited about this wedding. I don't even know if she would be that excited about a wedding like this to Galavant. Like, it's just not.
She wouldn't.
It just doesn't really strike me as her style.
She is,
you know?
She is unnaturally excited about this wedding, which is why in episode 4, the chef and Gwen keep being like, are you sure?
The jester noticed it too at the end of episode 3. Which I was
like, anybody else notice how like she was constantly trying to escape and now she's like totally fine with it? No, everyone's cool. Like no. I am a little sad that her parents didn't clock it. Because,
I know.
Like, her parents obviously care very, very much about Isabella. Like, you know, I feel like they know their daughter. And it's like, even when she's being frustrating or even when she's like not agreeing to the wedding, like, I always feel sad when it's played for laughs that like even the parents are like, yeah, she's finally getting into it. When it's like, no, this isn't your daughter.
Right. And they're just so distracted by the wedding. They're not even thinking about her. Or they're like, oh, who cares? She's getting married. I do enjoy, though, that Gwen and the jester and the chef in their own ways sort of gently check in with her. Like, hey, you've been acting a little differently recently. I mean,
Everything
Gwendolyn
okay?
in classic show is like, I mean, I noticed your eyes rolled into the back of your head as your tiara lit up.
I know. Gwendolyn again for the win.
I know.
Doing
calling
all
it
the
like
work.
it is. All the work.
Doing all the backbone of the very obvious work that is this show. But, you know, like they give it a couple of tries and, you know, spoilers, nothing really comes of it.
No,
I
even
think
after her little like Bilbo moment in front of the chef. You know the moment I'm talking about?
I do know the moment because
like,
the chef goes to kind of adjust the tiara and like this growl comes out of Isabella. It doesn't even make a joke about like, let me get some tea for your throat or something.
Yeah, basically
like,
right afterwards.
So good.
So good.
The comedy around this is like really top notch because, you know, like if you stop to think about it a little bit of how terrible it actually is, right?
Yeah.
But because, you know, this is always my least favorite thing of like, and someone's using mind control to like do a bad thing. And, you know, I have a complicated relationship with that, but it's especially hard when it's in a comedy to still keep it to be funny so that you don't think about it too hard. And I think they like toe that line really well.
They do. I also think it helps. Like, listen, mind control is never good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it helps that the wedding planner's plot doesn't include marrying himself to Isabella.
Right.
Because
it's not an Iago. It's not a full-blown, like, Iago moment.
Yeah.
Not Iago. Wait, who am I thinking of?
Just
Jafar. That's who I'm thinking of. Wow.
That was in sync
Thanks,
for me.
brain.
We got there.
We got there.
Yeah, no, it's not full on Jafar in that the wedding planner, isn't in love with her and wanting to marry her and wants him for herself. He's just going to use her to take control of the kingdom. Which, again, listen, not good, but distinctly less gross than the other option.
Yes.
Which maybe is how there is more levity to it. I don't know. It's also, like, very clearly sort of a red herring of a villain. Like, I don't think that this is going to result in... This isn't exactly going to be the climax of the show.
No, but I mean, they were obviously setting up, like, a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this feels like the fourth step of, like, a 25-step thing.
Sid already told us what the climax of the show is going to be. So I know that it doesn't really matter, like, well, what's going on with this person. This person's obviously going to disappear at some point, right? Like, it is more likely that that Richard's sword will be meaningful than this, because that at least gives him a right to the throne, which again, as Sid said, is the whole point of this thing.
Oh, I guess we didn't really talk about Richard's sword too much. Richard has a sword.
It glows.
It glows sometimes. It means he's supposed to be the king to rule all kingdoms or something, whatever.
The one true king.
One true king who is a genocidal monarch. No, so this whole thing is happening with Isabella, and no one's really picking up on it, or the people who are picking up on it aren't being listened to. And it's, you know, so that's sort of going on, and then
the A plot-ish, right? Because I think like the other A plot, as it were, is Galavant, Richard, and Roberta, henceforth known as Bobby, right?
Yeah.
Which we've already talked about, the Bobby and Richard's side of things, but...
Well, we haven't talked about how Galavant is trying to set them up because Richard is very bad at helping him get his army. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what he does is he's like, hey, gosh, I wish I could... Like, I should go alone. Well, not like alone, but like without you. Like, or maybe, you know what? Maybe if you were doing something else with a certain childhood friend.
Like, what if you spent more time with Bobby? And Richard is immediately like, Bobby, ew, gross, you know?
Bobby's like my sister. And
Right.
Galavant is just kind of like looking really hard at Bobby for this entire, like Richard is trying to be like, no, like, no, never, like, don't, no, that's gross. And meanwhile, Galavant is just like beeline eyeing Bobby and then just like, I know exactly what to do. Like
And
he sets up this candlelit dinner.
Oh, the plot is so silly. It is so silly.
I know.
He hides
It's very
both of their
sitcom.
shirts.
I know. It's very sitcom worthy. This is like the sitcom where it's like, I don't know, Ross and Rachel, some like Chandler's trying to get Ross and Rachel together and like blah, blah, blah. But like, it's so funny. Like he steals their shirts so they can't wear shirts to dinner. He makes believe that he gets quote unquote phone call. He gets like a crow.
It's so good.
He gets a crow and he's like, I have to take
Gotta
this.
go.
And he's watching them from the corner and it's like they're so bad at this because Richard is still treating Bobby like this childhood friend and like, doing those childish friend things with Bobby, right?
Yep.
Which is not what Galavant wants him to be doing. So he sort of strikes up a very like loose band with a couple of guys and like serenades them.
A little like
in the
kiss
way
the girl number.
A little kiss the girl number, but well, yeah. I mean, considering it's Alan Menken, it's 100% a kiss the girl number.
Yeah.
While also being like very aware of itself, as is the magic of Galavant of being like, don't worry. You're going to make an idiot of yourself anyway, but just like as long as you don't do anything awful, like it should go fine.
Yeah, or like maybe if you do all of the right things, you won't die alone. Like that's the refrain of the song. Maybe you won't die alone.
I forgot about that. Maybe you won't die alone.
And it doesn't work. Bobby and Richard are both uncomfortable. Bobby, I think, more because of the pressure. Richard because he's just not interested until Richard literally ends up with his sleeve on fire. And that's about, that's how that goes. The next morning, Richard confirms with Galavant that Galavant was trying to push the two of them together, and that's where it's finally confirmed that Bobby is, yes, interested in Richard.
Still keeping it to herself because Richard is completely oblivious of it. But like,
it's creepy, disgusting, the worst.
She kind of goes along with it for the most part, but it's also like she's into him.
Yeah, well, when he says it's the worst, she goes, yeah, all right, like cool it, man. Like it's not gonna be the worst to be with me. I mean, what really sealed the deal for her was when she finger guns him. At the end of it was like, yeah, with the finger guns. I was like, well, that's a fake yeah if I've ever seen one.
You clocked it.
We're just good friends. Right, finger guns.
Yep, buddy. But she kept the rose.
She kept the rose. And that's where we are with that. We've already talked about that part. I feel like we have to talk about the chef and Gwendolyn.
We have to talk about the chef and Gwendolyn, and then
we have to
talk about the other one.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With the other thing that I absolutely love.
Yes.
So Gwendolyn is having trouble adjusting to having a little bit of comfort.
Okay, but I have to say, I live a comfortable life, and I even died when I saw the chef like taking full plates of food and just dumping them into the garbage.
I know.
Like that was painful.
I know. Obviously they're referencing something very specific, which is, like when you've lived like scraping by for so long, it's very hard to adjust to being like you don't have to scrape by for so long. And while, yes, wasting food is not great, no matter how, like unless you're in the Hunger Games and you're in the Capitol and people just waste food all the time.
I guess.
It's like, don't waste food.
Yeah.
Hey, PSA, don't waste food. Try not to waste food.
What if you didn't take that entire bowl of perfectly good food and dump it in the garbage? It's exaggerated for comedic effect, right?
Yes. I mean, it is, but especially the exaggerated thing of she dives in after it to try and retrieve it. You know, like, because chef makes this beautiful meal and like brings it to the prince. I think he has exactly one strawberry and he brings the meal. It's like a tray of food.
Yeah, huge.
You know, and he just, he tosses it. And Gwendolyn like can't take it. So they have this very cute song about how like we're doing a little bit better. And I love that it's like, I think it's like the upper lower class or something. Middle lower class.
No, they definitely said upper lower class. It's so good. But it's all the song
just,
about how they're like moving up in the world and
they have
be
a
happy.
bed. They don't have to sleep in a cupboard anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, they have all these things that they didn't have before. They have space. They have a room that's their own. They have a real kitchen, you know, like it's just, it's interesting, right? Like how there's still the help.
Yeah.
But
they're
like,
the much
what's
more
that line
help.
about like the tapeworm?
Oh, her tapeworm is so much longer. I don't remember how much longer.
Yeah, I was like, I feel like I've been eating so much my tapeworm's grown 3 sizes. It's just, it's cute. It's very funny.
And I like that it, you know, again, on a comedic level, is kind of commenting on the idea that having everything, having all of the things that your heart desired doesn't always mean you're going to be happy, right? Because the chef tries to sell her. Or comfortable. You're right. Or comfortable. Because the chef tries to sell her on this in their duet. And he's like, this is it. This is as good as it gets. Like,
yeah,
we should be happy here. But at the end of the day, she isn't. She isn't happy. Yeah. She isn't comfortable. This isn't where she wants to be. And my favorite thing is that she's like, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. I'm gonna pack for us. And he grabs precisely one tiny hand-sized bag of something.
I know.
Which is cute. But then, of course, he's like, I'm coming with you. Right? Yeah. Because I'm not going to have...
Because, like, that's it.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to be happy unless I'm with you. And if you're not happy here, let's go. And they just do it. They just leave.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, cute, interested to see where that goes. But also, now 2 of the people who were in Isabella's corner and noticed that she was having her mind messed with are out of the picture. So, convenient writers, I gotcha. I see what you did there.
Yeah. It's, you know, obviously for the plot.
Yeah.
You know, and for them not to, like, instantly take out this one plot thing.
Yes. Yep.
You had to get rid of at least 2 of the characters who are on her side. But, like, I love how organic it is.
Yes.
Like, I 100% believe that Gwen was just very unhappy.
Mm-hmm. And I 100% believe that the chef would follow her to the end of the world. Ends of the earth. That's that.
And I mean, you know, the chef even starts that whole thing of like, you know, I don't know what to do, and asks Isabella's advice while she's under the influence of this crown. And it's like, well, you know, like maybe she doesn't feel special enough, you know, like, so the chef is like bringing her something. And then it's just like, you know what? This isn't what she needs. She needs to get out of here.
Yeah, this isn't it.
Honestly, like just relationship goals, Gwen and Vincenzo.
Seriously. Right? Like, forget everyone else in this show. Isabella pining after Galavant, Roberta falling in love with Richard. Blech. And, you know, we'll get to the romance that is teased at the end of episode 4, because I have feelings about that too. But the chef and Gwen, yeah. That's it. That's
perfect,
the one.
No notes.
That's the OTP in this show. That's my OTP.
See, now you know why they're some of my favorite characters. Didn't I say, like, as soon as the chef showed up, I was like, actually, the chef is one of my top 3 characters in the whole show. And, like, this is partially why. Because, like, you know, yes, they're very poor, but, like, they get each other on a level that I don't think any other couple in the show does. Anyway, we have to talk about Magdalena and Gareth. So...
And Magdalena specifically first.
Magdalena specifically. It's a lot of it's Magdalena because Gareth has kind of sorted out his guilt. Sort of. But now it's time for Magdalena to have her like emotional growth moment that we teased at the beginning of this episode. Yeah. So she's getting ready and she's obsessing over these earrings that she's supposed to wear to this party. And she has been invited by 2 of these I think now they're queens. I think they were princesses in the past.
Yeah.
But these two queens who she has a history with. Mm-hmm. Would you like to talk about that history?
Yes.
These two bullies.
These two bullies who, I mean, classic Magdalena, right? She was growing up in poverty, and she saw these two lovely girls in their beautiful carriage. The two girls invited her into the carriage, and, you know, she noticed their finery and their earrings specifically. But of course, it was just a trick. And after they invited her into the carriage, they did that super annoying thing where you, like, make the carriage move 2 inches forward, and you're like, ha, 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 ha. And then, you know, she tries to get in again, and they move the carriage forward. And then finally they, like, shut the door. I think they yell something about, like, oh, look how poor she is. And literally, like, whatever.
Yeah, way to have a comeback on that one.
Right.
Oh, you're so poor.
Right? I know. And just, like, charge away. Or whatever it is a carriage does. I don't know what verb to use there. And Magdalena has held on to this moment for her entire life. Like, all she wants is to have earrings that will impress these two queens and to finally be accepted as royalty by these two queens.
And so she goes to this celebration.
A Sunday roast.
A Sunday roast. Now, I actually sent you a message because I was like, hang on.
See, okay, I would have gotten that. Literally the only joke I wouldn't have gotten is when they thank the Friars for inviting them to their club.
Yes.
The rest of it, I was like, I know what a roast is.
Because what happens is Magdalena shows up, and it is, in fact, a roast where usually the elite show up somewhere. Someone is being roasted for the evening, and a bunch of people get up and make sometimes mean, usually often funny, mean. Sometimes often mean, though, jokes about the person in the hot seat.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, when it's done well, everyone is kind of able to laugh, and it's like this friendly time, right? Like, you can kind of get by because everyone has these giant egos, and you kind of like feel like you're taking someone down a peg, but in like a jovial way where everyone can laugh at it, including the person in the hot seat. This is not that. This is just two bullies who decided to take out their nonsense on the girl they've been bullying for, I don't even know at this point, 20 years, 30 years?
But it's almost like, why, right? What are they getting out of this exactly? I don't know. They're just mean-spirited people, I guess.
Why do bullies bully?
Right, but they get her there. They just, like, punch down the entire time. They make fun of her earrings. They make fun of, like, the fact that she will never be wealthy or have class in the way that they
promiscuous.
Do. The fact that she's promiscuous. I mean, they quote, roast her for not having any friends or anyone who cares about her. Though what's interesting about Magdalena is those comments definitely do not bother her as much as the comments about her earrings.
I know.
Like, she's clearly way more annoyed about that piece of things than the fact that they're making fun of her for not having, being able to hold on to a man or whatever.
I know. I mean, you can definitely tell she's uncomfortable the whole time. Because obviously she didn't think that this was going to be this. But yeah, it definitely escalates. And it's one of those things where it's like, I think when I was a kid and people were saying mean things to me and I mentioned it to like, a guidance counselor or a therapist or something, I think the advice I was given was like, because I couldn't figure out why it hurt so much, right? Like I was trying to kind of piece it apart of just like, well, I'm sitting here and I'm supposed to not care what people think. Because that's always what people tell you. But, like, it still hurts. And, like, okay, fine. But why does it hurt, right? And so, like, I'm trying to unpack that. And the advice I was given was, like, the comments will hurt for whatever will hurt the most for the comments that you yourself believe to be true about yourself. Of somebody pointing something out that maybe you thought was either a secret or, like, kept inside, right? Like, or something that this is the way you see yourself and you're not necessarily proud of it. And then someone else sees it and it's like, oh God, they know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I honestly think that was the earrings.
Yes.
Because she spent so much time picking out like these earrings that she thought looked gorgeous, which they do. Right. They're gorgeous freaking earrings. Like,
yeah,
they're awesome.
It's the earrings, and it's the fact that she is royalty in title, but she's not of royal birth, you know?
Right.
She didn't come from a royal family. And so, on some level, no, she's never going to be like these two queens. And they call her out on that too.
Yeah. And it stings. And it's one of those things where it's like, they're so out of touch that they're just like, oh, thanks for letting us do this. That was so great.
Fun.
We should do this again. Like, die in a fire. Anyway, so they do the same carriage joke.
Yep.
And they don't let her take a carriage home because the carriage keeps moving. Mm-hmm. And so she takes off her shoes and she walks home to where Sid and Gareth are having a drinking game, which I thought was very funny.
Yes.
But she gets in and she's like covered in dirt and she looks awful. And she's obviously walked a very long way. And, you know, at first Gareth is like, well, why are you getting angry at us? And then he kind of notices of like, are you okay? Right. Why do you look like that?
It's like her crown is askew, her feet are covered in mud, and she's usually extremely put together, right? Yeah. So even Gareth is able to pick up on this. Then Magdalena goes off and sings her sad little song about how maybe she's feeling something, and the thing that she is feeling is hurt. Her feelings are hurt, right? But Gareth doesn't, in the canon of the show, hear her singing, but he's standing outside of her door and she's crying, right? So he knows that she's upset.
He knows something is wrong.
Now, in the course of the song, we get a great little montage of what everyone else is doing, right?
Right.
Chef and Gwyn are leaving the castle. Roberta's looking at her rose. Galavant and Isabella are continuing to think about each other. And then Gareth gives Magdalena a present. I love the box that it comes in. It's like, I don't actually love it. I just think it's very Gareth. It's like it's very black leather box with like almost like studs on the outside, except I don't think it's studs, but it has like a black leather box.
No, it's very metal
vibes. You know,
it's very death metal. I don't know how else to describe it.
And it is earrings. The exact earrings the queens had, in fact.
Along with their ears, which are still attached.
So Gareth went and found these ladies and sliced off their ears and put them in a box for Magdalena.
And I love this moment of like, he goes like, I forgot to take off the ears. And he goes to like remove them, almost like, it's too garish, you know? And she's just like, no, leave it.
I love them.
It's perfect the way it is.
And of course, this whole time, the song is still going. So we're literally like fading to credits. Gareth is walking away. Magdalena is still singing. And the words...
Magdalena did kiss him on the cheek.
Yes. But Magdalena is still saying maybe she's feeling something, but now she's watching him walk away. So there's the tease. She's falling for him.
Yeah.
Which?
Do you have feelings?
I feel like I've already talked about my feelings on this. I mean, we can wait and see how it evolves further, because I think once it evolves further, I'll have more to say. But I've already said my piece, which is that this is why she should have fallen for Richard, because Richard was this terrible too.
I maintain that Richard would not have known if she was crying what to do.
I mean, fair.
Because Richard is ridiculously unaware. This is like whenever I read spoilers, I don't actually read these fics, but whenever there's a fic that says Tony Stark notices, I do not read it, because Tony Stark doesn't notice anything.
It's like the opposite of you had me at hello.
Exactly. It's the questionable, it's bringing strawberries to the girl you like and realizing that she's allergic to them, but you knew there was a connection to strawberries.
Right.
This is the kind of man you are writing about. Tony Stark doesn't notice anything. Tony Stark barely bumbles his way through life. This is King Richard.
Yeah. No, you're right. Like,
No,
Gareth
but, like,
is just
no,
like a
but, like, this
smidge more aware of the people around him.
Right. And this is why I like Gareth for this, because, you know, like, Gareth is just as awful, but Gareth knew what was going on.
Right.
Gareth had a sense of the world and a sense of understanding.
Basic
Richard just
situational
doesn't.
awareness.
Yes, at minimum situational awareness.
Yeah.
But I do think it's time for one more things before we go to overtime.
Okay. Honestly, I think my one more thing was going to be the drinking game.
Oh.
But I kind of
We can talk about it.
Well, I kind of like that we learn that Sid has literally no tolerance for alcohol.
I mean, of course he doesn't. Look at his size.
It's a whole morning later, right? Because she's been walking all night. And she gets back in the wee hours of the morning. Gareth and Sid are playing that game where you stick a person's name to your forehead and the other person has to give you clues. I think Gareth said like Charlemagne or something, which was pretty funny. But Magdalena thinks they've been playing the drinking game all night. And Gareth is like, no, he's had one drink. Sid's like asleep on the table.
Yeah, he passes out as soon as, like, he guesses King Arthur and he passes out. And Gareth is like, yep, you're right, and keeps drinking.
I kind of like it. I like it as an insight into what the two of them are like together. You know, when Magdalena isn't there, it's like, oh, I would love sort of like a mini spin-off or like a half episode just for these two.
Or at least just knowing Sid is happy somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's important to know that Sid is ultimately okay where he is. Mm-hmm. Like, he's not in the best of circumstances, but, like, he's not in any particular immediate danger.
No, he's not. Like, if anything, Magdalena and Gareth are both vying for his attention.
I know.
Right? Like, at the beginning of his episode...
You're not wrong.
Magdalena has taken him over him, really, or taken up his time helping her choose the earrings, and Gareth is like, you can't just take my personal assistant for an entire day. I think he says manservant. And Sid is like... He does
say manservant, and Sid corrects him.
Assistant.
I think we agreed on personal assistant. I'm happy with where he is.
Yeah.
Right now. I feel like he's kind of living his best life, actually. Mm-hmm. I feel like if you survive being Galavant's, squire for so many years, you learn a couple of things.
And then when Galavant was, like, at his worst. Because, like, when Sid was with Galavant for whatever amount of time he was with Galavant after the whole breakup with Magdalena happened, that's not a fun time for Sid. Like, Sid probably spent that entire time dragging Galavant out of pubs, cleaning him up, making sure he ate, like, getting him out of trouble, only for Galavant to get himself back in it. Like, nah. This isn't great, but it's way more comfortable than that.
This is as good as it gets.
As good as it gets.
I have a couple. Okay. But they're really they're really quick. So one of them is Harry's auto harness that he can just hop out of. I don't know why, but it made me laugh so hard. That he could just like, boop, and then he was down on the ground. But
also, like, why was he on the jester's back during the dance? Can we discuss?
Because he couldn't be in the front? I don't know. I don't know why it was back and not front. I don't know. Like a baby born up front.
Could he not just dance with her?
Or could he not just dance with her? Like, is the jester going to be in that position for the wedding? Okay, so that's the first one. The other one is Isabella writing her name.
Yes.
Yeah, she's just, isn't it the same name you already have? And she just goes,
yes.
And there's something about the way she says that like lives rent free in my brain. Like, yeah. Like dreamy and sort of out of it. And the last one is the way that, and look, Richard is actually a really good wingman for Galavant. He just needs to know when to stop talking. Mm-hmm. Really is his biggest problem. But like what the episode opens where he's like hyping up Galavant. And one of the things he says is like voted most attractive, number one attractive knight in Night Beat or something.
Like
which is like,
4 times in this pop magazine, whose name I didn't write down.
It was just like, Tiger Beat or, Bop or any of those, those teen magazines we had as kids to like this very attractive boy with a haircut that I actually have right now. And I think is super cool. But it's like, I'm living all my best teen dream boy life fantasies right now. But yeah, no, it was so funny. I love that exists. I like, what even is it? Like, is somebody at a typing press? Has a typing press even been invented yet?
Ooh.
Like, I don't know. I have questions.
Or someone is like hand drawing Galavant's face over and over and over and over again.
Over and over again. What is the quiz like in these magazines? Is it like, make sure your mutton is, like how to get that man, be sure to crush up some beetles and put them in your eyeshadow.
Well, like that's the thing. It's the same quiz. It's the same tips, just
I know.
1,000 years ago. 10 ways to keep your man interested. And then it's like,
be sure to butcher a cow.
Yeah. Or it's like, wash under your arms every other week.
Oh no, it totally is. But yeah, so those are our one more things. Those are the episodes. Next week we'll be doing 5 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
And we only have 6 more episodes left.
Yeah.
3 more to record.
3 down, 3 to go. We're at the halfway point.
We're at the halfway point.
Oh boy. Okay, listeners. Well, between now and then, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can tell us about your matchmaking story. You can also email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com. And don't forget, we have a Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/BockPod.
That's right. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the live lobsters in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.